Hi, everybody. Keith Tomatore, Global Lead of the Automotive Practice here at Perficient. And today, I'm really thrilled to have my good friend and partner, Rob Childs. Rob, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
My name is Rob Childs, as you said. I'm with the Preston Automotive Group, the Chief Marketing Officer, and I've been with the company a little over 4 years now.
I thought today, Rob, we could talk a little bit about EVs and then some other stuff too in the automotive industry. So, what have been some of the most difficult challenges facing dealerships, in your opinion, in the face of the EV transition, and how are your OEM supporting you?
There's been a couple aspects to that. One is I do remember at a point in time, I think during the COVID times too, when there wasn't a lot of inventory, but the advertising you'd see on television might be the cool EVs coming out, but we also didn't have them. So that was kind of difficult. When we think about they're building up this demand, but then we didn't know how much inventory we were going to get and that kind of the ordering and the timeline of it. And it was tough to tell a customer when we were going to be seeing some of these products too. So that was probably just trying to get a pulse on inventory and then true demand as well. And now that inventory is starting to pick back up, some of those challenges now are just getting people comfortable that are non-EV previous owners. Is that charging comfortability and confidence if they did make a purchase to know that it could fit their lifestyle. And so really just educating customers and whatnot too at this point. And I think to answer your question on support, most of the OEMs, and I'll give Ford for an example, have done a very good job of training. And that's where in training the dealership staff, because it's really going to have to start there in a lot of ways, because there's going to be a lot of questions that a sales associate or a service advisor have not received before. And they're going to have to be knowledgeable and the customer's going to have to feel confident with their answers when people do have questions about this technology, that it'll be the first time with it. So there's been some really good training. Ford's got a program where they're flying kind of key dealership personnel and from each rooftop that's committed to the Ford Model E program, and they're flying you to an offsite location for a few days, really putting you out there, charging a vehicle for yourself, like so you actually can understand, like if you do pull into that retail shopping center, this is what it's like. So you don't just watch a YouTube video and tell somebody about that. This is kind of like a real world experience for you. And then, all those kind of technology features that EVs offer that maybe some other vehicles don't. And then there's in-store support and training on top of that. So really some good hands-on training from Ford Motor Company right now. And I know every brand is kind of starting to look that way too.
Rob, since you have experience with 12 brands, is there any brands where you look at, like, what are the top 3 brands that are kind of doing it better than most, or at least setting the trends, right? Like setting the bar. Is Ford one of those brands, given that you brought them up? But what are a couple of the others that you look at and you say, these guys got it together. They're really pushing the industry.
Yeah, I think Ford is one of those. I think, the giving them a nameplate like the Mustang with the Mach-E when they really first dove in that was an aggressive kind of a statement I think they made. And then also when you had the Ford Lightning to really follow that, you had an F-1, you looked like an F-150. It didn't look like something completely different or someone was going to have to get used to this crazy design. It was something like, well, I've driven trucks like that for decades. And so it was from a design perspective, and then showing them all that kind of stuff on top of it with the frunk and whatnot was something really cool and unique to that brand. So I did give them credit for what they have come out with. And so that's been strong. I think another brand that we do have is Hyundai, and just looking at the lineup that they do have, the Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6, and they've been involved in the hybrid EV game for a long time now. And so I do think that has been, and they're great looking vehicles. And yeah, they offer a strong range from a charging perspective. So I feel like Hyundai, what they're doing has been impressive as well from our personal product lineup. And then the Chevy, the Bolt, it was kind of in the Bolt. We're a Chevy dealer as well. They've had some ups and downs, but I do feel like there are actually a lot of Bolts out there too. And so that's another nameplate that has definitely been involved and focused as they come out with the Silverado EV and other ones as well. So I feel like that's a brand to properly watch as well.
Excellent. And Rob, you have a lot of dealerships that you're managing, right? I mean, Preston Automotive Group is probably a mid-size auto group nationally, but they overperform, they over-index. How are your dealerships like transforming with the EVs? I know there's things they have to do to get certified, but how's that going? And anything you can offer us in terms of, tips in terms of what's going well and where the challenges are?
Yeah, a lot of customer preferences are changing. Like we have established a questionnaire for some people to, when they do come in and they say they want to consider they'd like to test drive before Lightning today. We do have a quick questionnaire that we put together based on some of our own associates that drive EVs. And we've asked them like, so what were some of the things that you would consider before you made that switch, or what was on your mind when you wished you thought of, or you wished you talked about before the purchase? And so we put that questionnaire together just to give them a little bit of a talking track to talk to the customer and talk about their daily commute and whatnot too. Or, if they're a fan of a certain team, talk them through charging station availability for that if they go to the ball game that weekend. So just talking through some of that and trying to, I know anxiety is usually one of the top things. And so the questionnaire has really helped with kind of establishing something like that. We are coming out with a video series as well, talking about, use the charger at a public charging station as well. So we think that will be beneficial just from a quick educational perspective. And the EV charging side of it from a dealership perspective, when we were getting requirements to put all these charging stations in play. And so with that, as that demand, will pick up in years to come, we think that, having those available will be great, but also too, what is that person going to be doing for 20 to 30 minutes potentially at our store if that's the charging timeline for them? So just so they're not sitting in their car reading a book. If they want to, that's fantastic, but let's give them some options too. So just thinking through that experiential perspective, and obviously someone that doesn't have an EV might be able to benefit from some of those aspects too if they're getting an oil change that day as well. So is it, installing an arcade at your store? Is it putting in a little putting green at your store? Is it creating better workstations, even if you just wanted 20, 30 minutes to knock out a bunch of emails because you've been driving all day, giving them a good workstation and Wi-Fi to work from. Obviously, that's always been popular, but, really being there for that. If it's a quick, kind of wash and vac type, where you're there for 20 minutes, but here's a free vacuum so you can vacuum your car while you're sitting there. So there's a lot of experiential changes that will come, and these are a lot of traveling owners too that you have to consider. So these might not be people who live nearby because they might have charging stations at home or good charging situations at home. So these customers very well might be on their way to the beach or vacation or on a longer commute for work. And so just keeping that in mind as well. These are going to be a lot of traveling owners potentially based on where we are located.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges that customers are saying, hey, I'd love to buy an EV, but, this is my concern. This is what's keeping me up at night.
Sure. Yeah. I think the price point still for some, especially your first car purchase or whatnot, some of that younger audience will make the jump to the EV right away, I think. But, that price point for a lot of them starts with in the 60s or so at times, if you really get what they would like. And so versus, your Ford Maverick that, can get around the 25 MSRP range is a lot more advantageous. So I think that affordability on EVs, I think is, for some owners is a big piece, as that potentially makes updates, or if there's really good leasing advantages, that's always a good conversation if we can provide that to a customer. But I think the charging is still a big conversation. It's, are there enough charging stations where I'm going to be so it doesn't really impact my lifestyle? And I bought this really cool car, but I can't make my summer trip to Florida, or it's going to be really stressful to figure that out because I'm going to have to, map out my commute or my trip. And for us, it is having that conversation with, well, in your brand app, a lot of them, or there's websites out there too, that can map out your charging throughout that trip. So it is a little bit of a change in your driving habits, but there are resources out there to give you confidence and be able to hit the road to your destination and really map out your commute thanks to the charging station network that is available. And and it's gonna increase going forward. Starting especially next year too. So creating that confidence in the charging network is still a big piece for sure.
Do you think there's a difference? You have a wide range of stores, right? You have a store in Baltimore, I know, which would be more like a city store, and then you have stores on the Eastern Shore. Do you think that the experience is different between those two types of areas in terms of EVs, what people are concerned about, the range anxiety and all that?
Yeah, there is. I think there's an adaptability in some markets. Some markets we don't have Uber or Grubhub, believe it or not. And so I think, and then you've got some other markets that are same day delivery with Amazon Prime. So I think there's just going to be some changes in customer expectations that'll be a little different. Obviously, time is always going to be the biggest kind of convenience and factor, I think, with a lot of these. But yeah, it is different. And I will say, there was a customer I was talking to last month. We were back and forth between a Bronco Sport and a Ford Mustang Mach-E. Loved the Mustang Mach-E, thought it was really cool, thought the technology was phenomenal. But he lives in an apartment building in Baltimore, and he just could not figure out a way to confidently charge since he was on the 7th floor in a building. And just kind of thinking those kind of things through in the metro market that might be more open to it, but he's trying to look through which, and helping him too, which public parking garages might be available to him to be able to charge or whatnot. And so it's just more of a, he started to sweat a little bit more on trying to think through charging. So I think there's some more adaptability maybe in some metro markets, but there might be some living situations you have to think through too that might be a hurdle.
Do you know what an EV charger at home does to your electric bill? I mean, could you speak to that a little bit? Because I know some people are like, oh my gosh, I'm just afraid I won't be able to afford my electric bill, especially with the higher costs of everything these days. Is it a major factor or not really?
I want to say I heard, and that's the thing. A lot of what I have learned is that most of the charging will take place overnight when you are obviously at home or sleeping, and your electric bill and the grid is not at its highest peak of usage because the lights are off in houses and whatnot too, and so cost will fluctuate. But I want to say the number that I heard at one point over the summer was the average fill up with an EV was $15 maybe, versus I think I filled up a vehicle that I have and it was $62 the other day. So that's a big change, and I can understand how the grid and that fluctuation can work, especially if you take advantage of it overnight. A lot of the customers are educated when they come in, but there is still definitely some that come in and they just want to jump on the trend that they see, and the next phone. They want to get the next iPhone 15 just because it's the next iPhone 15, and really educating them on this vehicle too. So yeah, it's been interesting to get a lot of different customers involved.
So Rob, what's next?
There's been this support being built for what's to come. And so with that being charging stations, and, we're talking about that experiential items and knowledge, it's really putting all that into play when the volume picks up. And even now, but once those questions become more and more, and, not just one person in a dealership being able to answer the questions about how to charge something, but everybody knows how to answer the question about charging. A lot of the chargers aren't covered. I know I was talking about that with someone else the other time, but it's interesting. If it's raining outside, most chargers, you end up getting soaked versus the gas stations always covered. A lot of charging stations actually don't have trash cans versus every gas station has a trash can available to you. There's some little convenience things that I think we still need to get to. And that's something that I've definitely learned with some of the people that I've purchased. I do think it's also been interesting that, yes, there are some people that are, making purchases that, especially the lighting in the Mach-E, they made a decision to purchase one, and Tesla obviously did this as well without ever touching it. And a very expensive decision to not test drive it or whatnot. It looks good enough to me online, let's do it. And I know at times it's well, does that color on my computer look the same as it going to be in person? Or when the sun hits it, is it going to be a little different? And so it's been interesting to see the confidence that a lot of people do have with, with making this adoption EV, especially if they haven't driven it or seen it in person before. So that's been really interesting to me.
Well, my last question is our research, and you helped us with our research. You're one of the folks we interviewed, and we spent the last year doing this customer research on the EV customer journey. We found a lot of things. One, the journey's not linear, right? Which I'm sure you know. But how does that journey, like, how are you impacted by the journey? What are you doing to reach your customers in different ways?
Yeah, I think reading that report where your 50% of your non-EV owners are concerned about public charging, probably not a shock. I mean, potential gut would be that you think that number might be bigger, but then 87% of EV owners saying public charging is not an issue, and they're confident in it. And so that, I think, was really interesting. If you do listen to the people that do have it right now, they're saying the high majority is saying they're in good shape. And your survey was, 1,000 customers throughout the country, not just one region of the United States, which I think is really helpful. So that, I think, says a lot. I do, looking at that, there was some really interesting. I mean, Tesla has done it where you can purchase a vehicle in like 5 to 7 minutes or so on their website. So I tip my cap to that. I think that's, again, somebody didn't touch or drive that vehicle potentially, which is pretty wild, but that, I mean, they made that experience very easy. And that has been our business process too. Our websites will only get better and in making it easier on that customer. But we do want to serve everybody, and we have been. I know, just me personally, I've had any vehicle that's been purchased through my friend or family network, they've all been delivered because they've been in West Virginia or Richmond, Virginia, or Boston. And it's been super easy. They've always said they would do it again. They never test drove it prior to. They made sure they liked it when it arrives. But then there's also the customers, and I got to be honest, I'm one of those where I want to test drive it and make sure I'm cool with it and I'm comfortable with it. So I want to come to the store. I'll mess around with payments prior to getting there, and there's going to be both customers, and so just catering to everybody.
Well, I appreciate you taking this time to be with us today, and I hope to have you back. And good luck on your sales drive to close out the year, and just appreciate all your help and support through the EV research as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.